Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have with us Ted Yang, an MIT engineer, former finance executive, founded over 12 companies, and we learned from him about his ageless peak performance playbook for staying valuable as you age. So we'll explore with him why experienced professionals may have the biggest AI advantage, what it means to build a personal AI team, and the first three things you can do this week to start using AI as cognitive leverage. Welcome to the show, Ted.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Welcome to the show. Welcome to India in this online form, Ted. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe, a lot of professionals across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll talk about ageless performance. So we'll talk about all this. But before, let's talk a bit about your journey, your background, so that the audience knows who they are listening to.
Sure, great. Well, thank you again for having me. It's a pleasure to speak to you and all your audience everywhere in the world. So as you said, I'm an MIT engineer. I studied electrical engineering for some time, and then I decided to go work on Wall Street and work in finance. So I was an executive, both in terms of technology and then overall C-suite for some of the largest hedge funds in the world and then private equity. But in the last 15 years or so, I've been an entrepreneur. I have started many different companies and focused really on building both technology as well as great products and things that people will benefit from having. And as part of that journey, I have been doing more thinking about performance and thinking about how both I have been able to be a great performer and what I've been able to do, and exactly what's been happening to me as I get older. And so that has led me to writing this book, which is Ageless Peak Performance. And it's really, honestly, because of how AI and using specifically generative AI has helped me stay sharp. And I try to share that message with other people.
Absolutely, absolutely. But before we come to the book or any discussion, just to understand it, when you talk about ageless performance, and as if AI will be able to help a lot of these people, what we are hearing is AI replacing a lot of professionals everywhere. Beyond that, we don't hear how AI has been able to extend their life after they have been laid off. So how and why should one believe that AI has the capacity? Yes, in some way or the other, remote something you might be able to do. But in terms of extending, before extending, it is cutting professional lives short everywhere in almost many industries. Help us understand in that backdrop, Ted. Why should one believe this particular notion? It looks like to be something spread by AI companies itself. You die today, live tomorrow.
So I think you're right. I think certainly there is a lot of impact with AI. And honestly, my message is that the revolution is coming, or it's here already for a lot of different places, right? The analogy that I use is that what's happening with the AI revolution now is very similar to what happened to blue collar work in the last century. That people who had relied on their physical labor in order to making a very good living suddenly were automated. The factories and the whole game changed in terms of their lives, and people had to figure out how they were going to stay useful and productive, and frankly, how they were going to stay as part of their own mental, well-being in when they were no longer able to rely on just their skills with their hands. This is the same thing that's happening right now to thinking work. And what you're saying, and I think this is right, we hear a lot about jobs being lost. We hear a lot about companies saying that they're getting rid of people because of AI. First of all, I think that is there's a lot of hype in there. I think that AI is the excuse of the day for people to get rid of people when there may be other reasons in terms of the economy or in terms of the markets or how companies perform. Even Sam Altman went out and said that. I think he calls it AI washing, that people are going and labeling, and it says, oh, I'm saving people because of AI, when really they're just cutting people. So I think it is a convenient excuse. But honestly, when I talk about the hope side of it, why listen to me? Why listen to anybody who is more hopeful about this? I think it is because AI is not simply something that can be used to get rid of people. I think it's quite the opposite. I think if you use it to just save money, you're only using it for one part of what it can really do. Because what it can really do is make you more powerful, right? Make you perform at a much better level. And isn't that what we're all about? There are 8 billion people on this planet. We're not just all going to go away suddenly because technology is here. Technology is a tool. It is up for us to use it in the best possible way. And that's why I stay hopeful about it.
Absolutely. So, how should people understand your version of ageless performance? How should they start implementing it before they get fired and then they realize that there is something they could have used?
Right, exactly. And I think that's part of the right message right there, because people are going to be using AI. Companies are going to be using AI. I think that if you're going to be badly affected by this, it's because you tried to not do it, right? You tried to pretend it didn't exist. You tried to stay on the side. And those are the people that are going to lose their jobs. I think you have to really try. So the first step is, if you are afraid or you don't understand what's going on, that's fine. Accept that and start thinking about AI and start thinking about how you're performing. The next step is to understand really what about yourself. So there's a couple of different things that I talk about in the book in terms of the science, but it's pretty straightforward that as you get older, I think we all notice that our speed, our ability to recall things in our memory slow down. But as that happens, you also have the ability to start to think more strategically. Your experience starts to build up what they call pattern recognition, which actually happens. And they say that neuroscience, the neurons actually are changing. This is verified by neuroscience as you get older, to be able to recall certain situations and then recognize those patterns again, and then say, here's what I think is going to happen. That's another way that, frankly, people make good strategic judgments. So if you are slowing down, at the same time, you're now able to make better strategic judgments. What you need is something that can augment your ability that have slowed down, as well as empower those that have gotten stronger. So that is the first step, right? Is to understand what this is really about, understand the capabilities, and then not be afraid to try to get in there and use AI and tools to see how they can help you in terms of what has changed.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, in terms of in your own life, how are you using AI to extend your professional life?
Yeah, I mean, I use it every day. I use it constantly. I think that there are obviously a couple of different tools out there. And let me just say for your listeners that when I'm talking about AI, I use it interchangeably with LLM, large language models, or generative AI, or specific chatbots, or ChatGPT, or Claude. Though that's what I say when I say AI. And for me, I use it constantly every day. So I think the key here is not using it simply like Google, right? Don't use it as hey, ask it a question and get an answer, right? You need to use it as ways to say, I need to think about something more carefully, or I need you to do something for me, or I need to do something with me, or I need to work on some problem. So for me specifically, I use it really as part of my thinking, right? As an extension of my ability to think. So like for example, today, this morning, before I came on your show, I have, a ton of email. I'm sure everybody has a ton of email, when you get up in the morning and you see what's going on, right? I can help you use AI. AI can help me go through those emails in a way that I can focus my attention on the ones that are more important. I can then take, hey, look, for the ones that are not as important, maybe it could help draft me some responses so I don't have to start using my own brain power and time until I need to use it for the ones that are more important, right? So examples like those are how I'm still using my judgment end of the day, because I'm the one sending those emails, I'm the one communicating, but AI is helping me do a lot of the analysis work that otherwise would require me to sit there and read them through and do a lot of things like that. So I can do, go through all my emails in a few minutes rather than 30 minutes or 45 minutes.
Absolutely. So a lot of people might think, ageless performance means, even if I am not useful to companies in one way or the other, I can still be useful in a way through artificial intelligence, create some niche or usefulness out of whatever skills I have, or branch out with those skills and find work in this whole planet of 8 billion people and many, many workplaces which are looking for people like me. If that is what people understand about ageless performance, how do they get to going and becoming that professional rather than using this generative AI and creating some more garbage, much more garbage rather than, only something is useful, more is the garbage part. How
Yeah.
does one do that?
So that's a great question. Honestly, I think there is a lot of garbage out there, right? And I think when you create a lot of garbage when you outsource your brain, right? When you ask AI to do something for you and you don't really think about what the result is, right? That's how you end up with this AI slop, all the junk you see on LinkedIn and other
Right.
places, right? All these posts that really just have no meaning, right? And the posts are, I don't even know who's really reading those, right? So you're creating things that are not really differentiating you because they're not coming from you. They're coming from AI. And so I think you bring up a very good point, which is to say, if your current employer doesn't value your AI skills, that is not an excuse for you not to have them, right? That just means your employer is behind, right? What you need to do is develop those skills on your own so that you can be useful for a future employer or your own business, right? And the way you do that is by differentiating and figuring out what about you is actually valuable versus what is just, something that is a commodity. And this message may be a little bit difficult for some people, right? Because a lot of the things that maybe have worked for you in the past now will no longer work for you. And again, I go back to when people were working with their hands, you had certain skills that now a factory, they don't need you to do those things anymore. You need to do different things, right? And so you had to get trained and get different skills. Well, that's the same thing that's happening right now. So you figure out what part of you is unique that really adds value and that might be valuable in the marketplace. And so one thing I think that is common is specifically for younger people, right? Younger people, they don't have the experience, right? They may not be, they might have worked for long enough to get some seniority, to truly understand what might be valuable in terms of their skill set in the marketplace, in terms of their judgment in the marketplace. And so for them, it may be a bigger question, like, okay, now how do I add value, right? And to me, the way you can add value is because younger people are digitally native, right? They grow up with their cell phones. They grow up using this technology like AI. They grow up using, teleconferencing, these kinds of things where older generations may not. So if they can leverage that, they can help bring businesses forward faster into AI. Right, for example. And that's something that many younger people, not all, of course, but I think many younger people can do, even though they've got less experience. And then they can use AI themselves to make up for the fact that they have less experience in the workplace or ability to say, communicate with more senior executives.
Right, Ted. In terms of industry sector, do you think professionals only across certain sectors who can benefit from AI? Or is it that it can vast majority of people, vast number of sectors, industries, people working there can benefit from AI? How do you look at that part? Somebody will say, I am in a village, I am in doing something else. I am being hired by local people. I do the work. How can I use this AI? Will it be useful to me? Or any professional on a sales job or anything, they will think, who will lead me in that sense? People don't want to hear phone calls. No, people don't. Why will they listen to somebody who is talking about AI? From that perspective, I'm asking about, somebody who is 40 and worried in today's time.
Yeah. So I think that's a good question. I think that the first industries that we've seen change are the technology industries themselves, right? Coding and developing of software by themselves, because coding and software is the language, and LLMs were trained on languages. And so their ability to write code should not surprise anybody. But what we've seen is that it becomes not the volume of code, right? All the different features you can write, it's the quality, right? It's the judgment that comes in terms of after the AI is producing the raw code, if you will, how to make it productive. And also, am I building even something that my clients, my users, my bosses actually need or want, right? That judgment becomes the more valuable skill, not how fast you can type out code on a keyboard, right? So those are the industries we've seen transform already, right? And I think, and then that starts to touch all the information industries and then service industries that are dependent on that. But you bring up, say, okay, a restaurant or some local small business. And I've actually spoken to many people around the world about their local small business, and they've asked me exactly that question. And I will say this: look, if you are someone that is doing something very small and you're making food by hand, you're selling to the people in your small village or your town, maybe you'll be very late to have this happen, right? But then again, what happens is people will want to pay, right, using applications of these things that are designed by AI. Maybe you want to do some marketing, right? And you want to communicate to people because you want to grow your business. Well, that's happening through AI. You have to file your taxes, you have to do your financials, you have to do all sorts of reporting. Okay, that's going to be happening with AI. So it is really going to be inescapable for almost anybody, unless you're working, on a very local, very cash only basis. And if that's happening, maybe you have more time, right? And but I don't think so, because I think what's going to happen is it'll just take longer, right? So maybe it'll take not 1 or 2 years, it might take 5 years, maybe it takes 10 years, right, to penetrate in some of those jobs. But even agriculture, right? So people who are growing things or what have you, we've seen technology change that, right? Both in terms of how to grow, what to grow, how to sell it, where to sell it. All of these things are all enhanced by technology. So I think that you are going to see a lot of these industries require you to have some understanding of how AI works. And then the question then is, do you want to follow what everybody else does and be behind? Or do you want to see if maybe this is something that you can understand, that you can be better at? One big advantage is that you no longer need to learn how to code. You don't have to learn how to read, different languages even, right? You can have AI and interactively ask it questions just like I'm talking to you. That's a huge advantage for people learning things, right? You don't need that degree to understand some of the different things that are happening in a lot of these areas. You can just ask it questions.
Absolutely, absolutely. One more thing I want to understand for the audience, Ted, is that AI is known to create content at scale and a large amount of garbage also at scale. And amidst all these things, how do I repurpose that garbage creating AI into a personal AI team which will work for me? How do I do that?
Yeah. So I go through this in the book, and I think it's important for people to think about other ways in which you use AI. So as I said before, and I agree with you, there's a lot of garbage. A lot of that comes from someone just saying, write me something, right? And saying, okay, look, I need 300 words to do a post, okay? Or I need 2,000 words for some report I need to make, okay? And that produces exactly what you think it does. The real skill becomes the judgment and the editing in making that effective, so that it's actually your voice. And even you can go further. You can train the AI to go use your voice, but you have to put energy into first defining what your voice is, and then either editing it yourself after AI writes it, or training AI better to write it in a way that's closer to you, right? That takes time and effort, but that is how you make it so that it produces less of that garbage. Also, I think fundamental to your question, and I think fundamental to the problem, is that previously the difficulty has been producing enough quantity at a certain cost, right? But AI can produce much more quantity than before. So now we no longer have as much of a limitation simply upon the quantity. So now we have a lot of quantity, but we have no quality, right? So before, when you didn't have a lot of quantity, yeah, some amount of writing was better than nothing, right? It's better for you, let's say you're building your social following, to put out some posts, because previously it would maybe take you too long to do a good post, and now you can get something that looks okay. But okay doesn't matter anymore. As we know, mediocre content, nobody cares about. People need good stuff. And the good stuff right now, in my opinion, is really curated by humans. AI, can have its opinion. And again, this goes to the second part of your question, which is the AI team, right? Use AI as part of your team and have a voice that says, hey, act as a social media strategist, act as a tastemaker, act as someone who is doing research into what other people are talking about, right? Don't ask it just for the answer. Don't ask it for one simple thing. Ask it for a team of different opinions, and then use your judgment when you hear that comes back. This is very analogous that if you had a team of humans that was working, right? Let's say you had a media team that was working on managing your social content, say 5 years ago before you had generative AI. You would do the same thing. You would have experts that have all those different things that I talked about. But if you trusted just one person to be you, well, that wouldn't work, right? You're better off having that whole group of opinions. And so that is the way, at a high level, how you use AI as a team to augment you and hold you up.
Absolutely, absolutely, Ted. So coming to your book, Ageless Peak Performance, who is this book for? Why should people read this book?
Sure. So the book covers many of the things we talked about today, the history of how we got here in terms of tools, and then it offers a playbook. And so this is really the short answer, is because I think that people can figure out a lot of these things, but it's more helpful to people, certainly people who are a bit older, to have a book or some guidelines that gives you an idea of how to walk down the process of making yourself better with AI. And that's why I wrote it as a playbook, right? And specifically in terms of the framing of the playbook, the introduction I just talked about, but then I go into principles. So there are 4 specific principles that are in the book that create it's called a framework, but also something that I hope will last. So it doesn't matter if Claude has a new feature or ChatGPT releases a new version. The principles are things such as treat AI like an intern and not an oracle in terms of how do you use it and what do you trust it and the way in which you interact. That's the first principle. I think that's something that's going to last. So I go through it in terms of principles, and then I go through it in terms of 5 superpowers that come from those principles. So for example, by using that principle of being able to treat AI like an intern, you can then work 10 times faster. That's the first superpower, 10x execution. But the way in which you do that, I think, is critical because, again, if you do it kind of simply, if you just ask it to do something fast, it will come up with great results very rarely. You're more often going to come up with average results, and you're most often going to come up with garbage.
Absolutely. There's so much to learn about all this from you, Ted. And I'm sure a lot of people who want to connect with you also learn from your book. What's the best way for them to do so?
Sure. So the book site has a lot of information, also has connections to all my social media, agelesspeakperformance.com. And you can find me at TEDx Sensei on Instagram or TED Sensei on LinkedIn. And, or you can, my other contact is again on my book website, which is again, agelesspeakperformance.com is the best way to reach me. And I look forward to hearing from people. If you've got questions, you want to follow up, absolutely, please send me a line.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you for having me.